Sunday Baroque Conversations is made possible by the Friends of Sunday Baroque and is produced at WSHU Public Radio in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm Suzanne Bona. Thank you for listening. Don't miss an episode of Sunday Baroque Conversations. Subscribe on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a review. If you want to find out where you can listen to our weekly show, visit our website, sundaybaroque.org, for a station list and our 24/7 stream. Again, that's sundaybaroque.org. Shawn Okpebholo is an award-winning and critically acclaimed musician. Dr. Okpebholo is a composer and conductor who earned his master's and doctoral degrees in composition from the College-Conservatory of Music at the University of Cincinnati. He has composed a wide variety of music, and it's been performed across the globe by top-tier musicians and ensembles. Dr. Okpebholo is professor of music composition at Wheaton College-Conservatory of Music in Illinois and composer in residence of the Lexington Philharmonic in Kentucky. Shawn Okpebholo joins me on Zoom to talk about his life in music. Hello, what a pleasure to meet you.
So good to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about music, and this is very special since I lived in Cincinnati for 5 years. So I consider Cincinnati one of my homes.
Yeah. You have credited your early participation in music to the Salvation Army Church, where you received free music lessons. Would you talk about that? How did you connect to those lessons to begin with? Had you wanted to learn an instrument?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So I grew up in a poor part of town, the projects, the government housing of Lexington. Single mom, she worked multiple jobs to provide for my sisters and me. And the Salvation Army church bus came to our community. I was about 6 years old. And it was a Wednesday night. And so they would pick up the kids in the community for this Girl Scout, Boy Scout type program. Where we learned different things. We would earn badges and things like that. And my mom, being the overprotective mom that she is and still is, she got on that bus with us. Because she didn't know these people. Back in the day, you can just kind of just throw your kids on buses and whatever. But she still didn't do that. She came on that bus with us, and we started doing this program every Wednesday, and several months in, we had to earn like a church badge or a Bible badge, something like that. Because the Salvation Army is a church. We know it more as a social organization here in the U.S. And so they came to pick us up on that Sunday. The Salvation Army, as an ecumenical body, has probably one of the largest or more comprehensive music programs. Again, something you may not know here in America. And so at a very young age, they gave me a baritone horn, my twin sister, alto horn, and my younger sister, a cornet. We sang in the choir. And they taught us music. So I had these world-class musicians as parishioners in this church. And they taught me music. And they also helped my family in me out, because in any way they can. But music was a part of that education. When I was about 13 to 14 years old, I wrote this little hymn setting for euphonium, horn, and piano, and I played it at the church. And this world-class composer, world famous composer, I should say, a band composer, James Curnow, went to my church.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just knew him as just a fellow parishioner at my church. And one day he says, after I played that solo, said, he's a euphonium player, former euphonium player, but he's like, let me give you lessons on the euphonium. You're sounding really good. And so whenever he was in town, he would give me free lessons on euphonium. But that lasted for about maybe a couple months, and then finally I said, Mr. Curnow, I really appreciate you give me euphonium lessons, but I'd rather you teach me composition. And he said, I'd much rather do that anyway. So from from that young age, of 14 or so, I started taking private lessons with this, established composer, and he took time and just really helped me focus my craft, and I'm so grateful for that.
Wow. I have
Yeah.
goosebumps. That is an amazing
Yeah.
story. Wow, wow. Um, I do want to just veer off a little bit and ask, what about your sisters? Do they still do music at all?
They don't do music at all. It's funny. My younger sister in particular, I've always felt she was just more naturally even talented than I was. But what it did for my family was instilled in us, this work ethic, this appreciation for helping other people.
Mhm.
Um, because all of my siblings, we are professional in our own right. Where whether it's, my younger sister is a therapist, and she runs the social workers and the public school systems in Fayette County in
Mm.
Lexington, and
Mhm.
my twin is an HR professional at a university.
Oh.
And so what it did, music is, you don't have to be a professional musician, but I do believe that having those skills are transferable in so many ways.
Yeah, yeah. And boy, your mom must be proud of all three of you.
And I have to brag about my mom for a second. Um, this may or may not be on the podcast, but or the interview, but one of the jobs early on, when we started going to the Salvation Army was, she would do laundry at the homeless shelter.
Mm.
The Salvation Army in Lexington, Kentucky has one of the largest homeless shelter, if not the largest homeless shelter in Kentucky.
Mhm.
And she that was her job. She was just, she would do laundry, for linens and things. And
Yeah.
fast forward 25 years later or so, she runs the whole facility. And so she has these social workers under her.
Wow.
There's a medical clinic that the University of Kentucky residents do that's free.
Mhm.
During Christmas time, she leads this effort helping like 5,000 families get gifts. So it's one of
Wow.
those things where, like, not only did, it help, propel us, the children, but she found her calling, helping people. And now she's a staple of Lexington. People know who she is, because she's helped so many people through this shelter.
Wow. Wow. That's
Mm.
just so inspiring.
Yeah.
Um, so you've already you've given me the answer in two ways to this question, which is your mom and James
Mhm.
Kurnow. But who were some of the other influential mentors and teachers in your life along the way?
Yeah, so at so many, through the Salvation Army, we had people like, Ron and B. Holtz. They were pretty influential to me. But as I went to college and in graduate school, I had some really amazing mentors, from Vicky Bell at Asbury University, where I went to did my undergrad, to Joel Hoffman, the composer at CCM that I studied with the most there. And
Hmm.
he was just an amazing, he is an amazing human being. We come from very different perspectives, backgrounds, but he was able to just bring some so much creativity in what what I do. But I'm grateful for, just people who just invested their time, and their energy, and it helping me, hone my craft.
Mm, mm. And how did your background and your experiences with these amazing mentors and teachers and all, and as a student, how does that and has that affected you as a teacher? Because that's what you also do now.
Yes, absolutely. Especially in terms of diversity of styles and purpose and things like that. Um, classical music is pretty prescriptive. You go to music school, you do this, you do this, and I'm down with a lot of that. And I mean, I kind of fit in that mold too. But I also realize that, like, people come from different backgrounds, and and um you know and My goal is to help them as a composition professor is to be the best composition to be the best composer for them and their style.
Hmm.
Um, I don't try to, impose my style, my even my approach on my students. I help them take their approach, their style, and make it unique. Um, but also on a kind of tangentially speaking with what you just asked, I there's so many people that took time in my life to help me out, because we couldn't afford lessons. I mean, we just couldn't do that. And so I don't do that a lot, but I try to give back as much as I can too. Later on today I'll be going to one of the public schools in the Chicago public school systems
Hmm.
and talking about music and helping inspire children. It's a predominantly Black school, so they can see a living composer who looks like them, and that I think even though I'll be there for maybe an hour or so,
Hmm.
even that small gesture hopefully could like give some hope for some students who
Hmm.
want to create.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to pick up on what you just said, which is, to have someone come in, a living composer, and someone who looks like them. Talk about the impact of that, the importance of that.
Yeah, so it's funny that you asked that question. I was talking to one of my students who's applying to graduate school. A white upper middle class kid, great composer. He says, Dr. O, there's a diversity essay that I kind of need help with, and in his grad school applications.
Hmm.
And so I said, write about your experiences. He said, what do you mean? I said, you in your undergraduate here at Wheaton College Conservatory, you've had a Black professor of composition, a Guatemalan
Hmm.
professor, a Korean woman, the white professor. I said, that is so unusual. And then
Hmm.
you've already mentioned how our approach has influenced your music. I said, I have 3 degrees. I've never had a Black professor,
Wow.
you know? I said, but you know what? I have 3 Black music teachers. Sorry, I had 3 Black teachers from K-12,
Hmm.
and they were all music teachers. My
Wow.
kindergarten teacher was an African American woman. My middle school band teacher was an African American male, and my high school choir teacher was African American
Hmm.
male. I'm not saying that's why I'm a musician, but I think it's funny that like the only Black teachers I had in K-12 were the ones who looked like me, and that's what I'm doing for a living.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. So you're conducting as well. Yes, you conduct much, or is that sort of a smaller part of
No, I
you?
don't. I rarely conduct. I think I do conduct, but I rarely conduct. It's one of those things where you have to pick and choose, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but you've conducted ensembles, musicians that are playing music that you've composed, yes, in the past?
Yeah, I have done that. Yes. Mhm.
What's that like?
Well, it's funny. It's always fun to conduct, especially the music that I've written. But
Right.
I actually like to step away from that. To be honest with you, I like to have people who do that, who are conductors, just take my music and make it their own, and bring life into it their way. And
Hmm.
so I am one who likes to sit back and even if they interpret something which is not my original intent,
Hmm.
but I'm definitely one to appreciate other people's craft and expertise and how they can bring my music to life in very unique and beautiful ways.
Mm-hmm. So I think maybe people might be confused or wondering about, you played the baritone horn.
Mhm.
Um, I'm assuming you don't play anymore from the way you talked about it. So how does a composer approach writing for instruments that he or she does not play?
That's a great question. So no, I'm not a performer anymore. I wish I were. I live with 3 performers. My wife is a professional violist, and my daughters sing and play piano and saxophone. And so, but I don't perform anymore. But I approach it like any type of collaboration or research. If you're writing a book
Hmm.
about a subject, you're not going to just write about it. You have to like talk, you have to research about it, and so
Mm-hmm.
I have people that I literally call up, if it's a brass, I can do brass. I've grown up playing brass. I don't think much um help with that. Though I still have people that I you know, engage who play like trumpet, dealing with certain mutes and things like that. But if I'm writing a piece for clarinet, or cello, or or anything, I engage people who are experts in that. I also do a lot of score study, a lot of listening.
Mm-hmm.
That also helps also, but it's a growing continuous. Sorry, I continuously grow in that area. And so yeah, I am not afraid to engage musicians. It's funny. I tell my students, this violinist will always know how to write for the violin better than you. You may have the creative ideas,
Right.
you may have all the this stuff in your head that you want to evoke, but they will always know how to write better than you. So why not engage them and say how can I make this the most effective, the most natural for the violin,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I know a lot of people, a lot of creative people, like writers and composers and whatever, have sort of a discipline, a schedule. Some are a little bit more free form. So, are you someone that, reserves a certain amount of time or a certain time of day to sit down and compose or try to compose? Do you just sort of stare at the blank page and wait until the muse visits? Or do you wait until the muse visits to sit down and do
No,
that?
well, that's a good question. I compose every day. I have to,
Mm-hmm.
because of my competition schedule. But I have competing priorities.
Oh,
My work as a professor, but also most importantly as my family.
right.
You know, and so if I have to stay up late to compose, I will do that. If I have to
Mm-hmm.
wake up early to compose, I will do that, or in the middle of the day. So because I have these priorities, I don't necessarily, at least in this season of my life, have the luxury of having a set time, except during the day when everyone's in school or working.
Right.
But no, yeah, yeah. So it's not as organized as I would like it to be.
Mm.
The only consistent thing is that I do it every day.
Ah, ah. Um, Maybe this is a controversial question, but since your wife is a professional violist, have you written music for her?
It's funny. I've written a couple pieces. I haven't written the piece for her yet. I haven't.
Mm.
I joke and say, I joke and say I can't afford her. So,
Well
but
played.
no, yeah, but no, I haven't written the viola uh piece for her. She's more of an orchestral player anyway, I think.
Hmm.
She does chamber works also. And
Hmm.
so yeah, it'll
Mm.
come someday.
Maybe it'll be a viola concerto for her.
Exactly. It'll be
Mm.
perfect.
Yeah. So, and I'm glad you talked about that sort of different genres or whatever, because you have composed, the breadth of your work is extraordinary. I mean, you've composed chamber works and art songs and choral music and opera and orchestral music, but then you also have done some jazz and some film music and some pop. How is it different? What are the different considerations as a composer when you're writing in different genres, or are there different considerations? Is composing no matter what?
Yeah. So for me, everything I write is about something, is for something, it's inspired by something. I try to have some sort of message. So that's the consistent thing. It doesn't matter the genre really. What am I trying to evoke? What am I trying to tell? What story am I trying to tell? What am I trying to what am I trying to like get across?
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be super intellectual or about justice or about um something, difficult. So whether it is that or something more simple, there's always some sort of purpose, and I think that's what unifies my writing. I
Mm-hmm.
know there are composers that can just compose music for music's sake, and they write brilliant music. I can't do that. I'm jealous of them, but all my music, is really about something, is for something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what inspires me.
Mm, mm. So when you do a lot of commissions, and you get commissions from these big soloists and from other organizations and from universities. So what is that process like? Someone comes to you and says, "Okay, we want to commission you to write a piece." What kind of parameters, what kind of other information do you get from the person or organization commissioning you to work with, or do you get any kind of
It is a
direction?
wide range. You'll have
Yeah.
someone say, here, I want you to write this piece, whatever you want. Okay.
Hmm.
And there are
Okay.
there are times, that someone will say, we want to commission you to write this piece commemorating this centennial.
Ah,
Okay. And you have to think about how can that work,
right.
but it's very wide ranging. I actually don't mind parameters. That helps me focus a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some composers hate parameters, but um, I don't mind it with some limitations, like say write a piece that maybe kind of is about this or whatnot.
Yeah.
Now, there's always parameters in terms of like instrumentation, a lot of times at least length, the scope, things like that.
Sure.
But as far as what I write about, that varies.
Hmm.
But I always engage the commissioner, but also the performers, the conductors. That makes my pieces stronger. As in the process, I try to keep them involved as much as possible because
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing for them.
Right. Now, you did a residency with the Chicago Opera Theater, and that culminated in the premiere of your first opera, The Cook-Off, with the librettist Mark Campbell. Would you talk a little bit about your first opera?
Oh, that's great. So as you can probably tell from this interview, I'm pretty extroverted, and I like people, and opera is probably the most collaborative art form. I mean, you're not just collaborating with the librettist. You're collaborating with the music director, with singers, with the costume designers, right? With
Right.
everything. And so it's funny. I've written a lot of art song, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have like 4 or 5 full complete song cycles. That's not including my collection of, you know, 2 collections of Negro slave songs. Um uh and with my art song, I don't just write, the vocal part and then the accompaniment. The accompaniment drives the narrative. In fact, if it's for say it's for mezzo and piano, I call them duos,
Mm.
duets. It's not for mezzo soprano accompanied by piano, the duets. And so my music, even my instrumental music, has a narrative quality to it. And so I think it was natural for me to really get into the opera world, and I love it. Yeah, I love it. It kind of like drives you crazy in the process because it's so difficult. It's a lot and
Yeah.
so complex.
Yeah.
But the reward is so worth it when you write a complete opera and then you have all these people taking part of making your story come to life. Yeah. So I've written one opera. Hopefully there'll be more in the future. But that was great working with Mark Campbell. I mean, he is. I don't know if you know him or not, but he is one of the most prolific librettists. Every composer every big composer has
Right.
written opera, has many of them have worked with him. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
his opera Silent Night won the Pulitzer Prize,
Mm.
some years ago, and some of his operas has won Grammys, and so he's just a delightful human being who is a master at telling a story. So it was so great working with him.
Wow. So, composing, commissions, teaching, your family. What else are you passionate about, musical or otherwise?
I love people. I like to engage people, hang with people. I like you know traveling. I love food.
Mm-hmm.
I have a wonderful family. That I love to do things with. But yeah, composition is my career. That's what I do. It's what I love. I think it's probably the thing I'm best at. But I like all sorts of things, and also I like all sorts of creative things. It's probably why I love going to certain restaurants, because I do think food is art, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I love the visual arts. I love the theater arts. My family and I, my family and me, we go to plays all the time, with our children, and our children are in plays now. So I really
Yeah.
engage that. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that both your daughters are playing instruments and singing. Do you think either one of them will become professional musicians like their parents?
I don't know. They are naturally talented and gifted, and they're brilliant, brilliant little musicians. Um, it's funny. I don't think they don't know any different in many ways. They don't know that like what my wife and I do is not normal, but I think it's so normal to them when they
Right.
see my wife practicing, hours a day or composing or going to a premiere or going to see her play a concert. That's just normal life for them. So,
Hmm.
so I don't know. I don't want to I don't want to impose my dreams on them.
Right.
But all I want them to do is really appreciate music, appreciate the arts. And I don't necessarily want them or need them to become professional musicians. I just want them to understand what creativity is, and use that in whatever they do. So I have no idea. I'm not trying to escape this question, but I because it changes all the time. So
Sure.
with them.
Sure. Sure. Of course. Dr. Shawn Okpebholo is an award winning and critically acclaimed composer and conductor. He is also professor of music composition at Wheaton College Conservatory of Music in Illinois and composer in residence of the Lexington Philharmonic in Kentucky. What a pleasure to speak with you, and can't wait to hear what you have coming out next.
Thank you. So much fun. Thanks for having me.